Today is the start of college football season. If you're confused about what player is playing for what team and what conference those teams are competing in, you're not alone. To help explain, there's a new book called The Price: What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. It's co-authored by John Talty and one of our old friends from CBS News, Armen Keteyian.
I've been covering college football for like 40 years. I've never seen the amount of frustration and exhaustion and anger and confusion that's going on right now.
After what Armen Keteyian calls decades of denial and delay, in 2021, college football was forced to accept reality.
The Supreme Court has handed a massive victory to college athletes.
Student athletes would be paid.
It will be able to show to the younger generation, hey, you no longer have to be truly an athlete. You can show that you're a businessman. You can show you're an artist.
The NIL era, or name, image, likeness, does not allow colleges to pay athletes directly, but so-called team collectives can. Standalone organizations that raise money from donors and fans and operate without many rules. Add to that mix big programs recently switching conferences as they eye bigger paydays. And the portal system for student-athlete transfers.
Former Auburn quarterback Bo Nix, who entered the transfer portal last week, has announced his commitment to the University of Oregon.
All of it is examined in the new book by Keteyian and John Talty, The Price.
2 times a year, you can literally, after spring practice, you think you have your team set, and some guy goes, hey, by the way, I'm in the portal because I think I can start over here, and they're going to give me $500,000 to go do it.
I feel like at some point they're just going to make it okay to transfer at halftime.
Exactly.
I mean, it's getting to that point. And
Hey,
Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go play for the other team.
Yeah.
in our book, we tell the story of before a bowl game, multiple Maryland players asking the head coach for $50,000 to play in the game. And it's either you're going to pay it or we're not playing. And that's what coaches are facing now.
It's kind of legalized extortion.
Most of the upheaval is about doing more things for student athletes. So I don't necessarily view that as a bad thing.
NCAA President Charlie Baker has issued a sweeping proposal, dubbed Project D1, that would create a new tier of Division I sports in college, allowing schools to pay athletes directly.
The collectives obviously were an unanticipated form of NIL, and they'll probably have a role to play going forward too. But in my mind, the missing link here is to create a direct relationship between the school and the student athlete, and that's what the deal that we're working to put together would do.
Do you think your plan can fix college football?
I do think it provides a framework, and that's important because right now there really isn't a framework.
And when you say it provides a framework, that means it's not just your responsibility, others have to help too.
Oh yeah, this would be the kind of thing where everybody in D1 would basically be signing off on it.
Among Project D1's priorities, allowing student athletes to keep their scholarships for 10 years, whether they play or not, and insurance coverage funded by the NCAA for injuries sustained in their sport for 2 years after leaving. There has also been wider talk of a salary cap for college football teams.
I think the coaches want salary caps because it gives them a set of rules they can work with. I think the fear is that you lose something that makes college football special along the way.
You know, Jeff, there's a reason, and I think the book is called The Price, because we saw time and time and time again, it's not just the financial numbers and the price that way. It's the emotional price, it's the psychological price, it's the physical price.
Or the price of losing a head coach. As Keteyian and Talty document, the era of chaos in one way or another was responsible for Jim Harbaugh of Michigan going to the NFL and Nick Saban of Alabama retiring.
All the things that I believed in for all these years, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics.
One thing with Nick Saban was he wanted absolute control over his program. He lost control in talking to people around him and also knowing Nick as long as I've known him. This was not the game that Nick wanted to be involved with in terms of controlling the program, not knowing who's going to be in your locker room next week. The fact that both Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh probably the two most prominent singular faces in the sport are no longer coaching college football. That tells you something.
Emerging most successfully from the chaos, according to Keteyian and Talty, are top teams of the revamped Big Ten and SEC divisions, including Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Ole Miss, and Texas.
Well, look at Steve Sarkisian, Sark at Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the pictures that they had of the Lamborghinis that were lined up outside.
For the players.
For the players. Welcome to Texas.
Money, 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 with loose rules. Welcome to College Football 2024, where everything is bigger, if not a bit broken. Baker hopes to fix that.
I think it'll take a couple of years for the dust to settle, but I think that certainly would put in place something we don't have now, which is rules, transparency, accountability, and a framework. And it puts back the most important thing in my mind, which is that the relationship is between the school and the student athlete, which it currently is really not, and that's a problem.
Whatever the ultimate solution, Talty and Keteyian believe it starts with a common eye for the greater good.
They need people that have a big picture and that want to get in the trenches and try to work this out and don't have their own self-interests at heart. And that's where the rubber meets the road here, is to get people to have groupthink. Then in the end, it's for the better of everybody. And that right now, because no one knows where anything's going, your first inclination is to say, well, what about me? And that's not good.
Armen thinks you have to find those better angels out there.
I think that's really hard.
Of course it's hard. He thinks that Charlie Baker may be one of them who can bring everyone together, but it will require some sacrifice by some teams.
And it feels like this was brought upon the NCAA because for years they were asked, pay your players, they're making this, there's a way, and they just kept saying, no, no, no. And then suddenly those floodgates opened and it changed entirely.
And we're still dealing with the fallout. But remember, the NCAA, these are not employees of the school. They're student athletes.
Student athletes.